With apologies to my fellow artillerymen for reasons that are about to be apparent, and with apologies to all of you because just because I can't sing doesn't mean I won't. Hear them hum, watch them run, no, our job is never done, for our roadways go rolling along. While you ride, while you glide, we are watching down inside, so your roadways keep rolling along. Oh, it's hi, hi, he, the roadermen are we. Check off the sectors loud and strong. 1, 2, 3, anywhere you go, you are sure to know that your roadways are rolling along. Welcome back to the Lore and Valor podcast. I'm your host, Justin Watson, and we are continuing our series on Robert Heinlein's definitive short fiction anthology, The Pass Through Tomorrow. My copy is so old that it's come apart on me. I'm very sad about that. So, The Roads Must Roll continues in a vein, sort of. In our very first short story that we covered last time we were here on the channel, Lifeline, Heinlein posited a biotech advancement, although biotech was not a word that was in vogue at the time, wherein a scientist created a surefire, reliable method to calculate down to the minute the lifespan of a human being. This story takes on an advancement that is much more civil engineering, mechanical engineering, big nuts and bolts type innovation, in that it posits a future United States in which the freeways and the interstates, all the major road networks have been replaced by a conveyor belt road system, a massive conveyor belt road system. Based on dialogue in this story, I get the impression that Robert A. Heinlein was not overly fond of automobile traffic in large cities. I live in Houston. I can sympathize. So for the sake of the story, he posited the idea that to reduce the amount of traffic congestion, reduce fatal traffic accidents, reduce consumption of fossil fuels, although obviously they weren't quite as worried about that back in the 30s and 40s as we are today. Instead of having a bunch of individuals or small groups in cars, buses, and trucks, what if we put the commercial centers, the schools, the retail, and the restaurants, all the places where people congregate for work or for play, on a giant conveyor belt system that then took those centers of commerce, education, and entertainment through your residential neighborhoods? Big job, but kind of a fun idea. Where an older science fiction short story might rely more on the gee whiz factor of imagining a continent-spanning massive conveyor belt road system, what Robert Heinlein does is take that theoretical change in society and really explore what it might mean for the United States and what would be necessary to make it work. So what the story ends up boiling down to is a few themes encapsulated in a few people. So we open the story with a labor union meeting. The speaker is actually management, a man named Van Cleek, but he came up through the ranks to become the deputy chief engineer, so the second guy in the hierarchy of engineers and technicians that keep the roads rolling. And he's fomenting malcontent, right? He's telling the roadway workers how they need more power and their wages aren't high enough, and really, should they really be even taking orders from their degreed engineers? Should they really even be taking orders from the government? Shouldn't they really be the ones on top of the whole order in the country, since the roads are the most indispensable part of the entire economy of the United States of America? Now, I want to break in here to point out that Heinlein tries to walk a pretty fine line in this story about labor versus management, right? So since a labor-focused agitator is presented as the clear antagonist in the story, it would be easy to take this as a hardcore crony capitalist scree against ungrateful workers, but that's not what Heinlein's getting at. Within the labor union meeting itself, there are definitely people who dispute Van Cleek's assertions, who point out that they have actually gotten a lot of the concessions they wanted from a previous strike. They make it that gets referenced a couple different times, that there was a strike prior to this story that both the protagonist and several other characters feel was justified and corrected several injustices. So he's clearly not just trying to say labor is wrong whenever they collectively bargain or if they decide to strike. That's not what he's getting at. What's telling, and what I think Heinlein is saying is bad, is Van Cleek's character and his ability to play on the worst impulses in his fellow technicians' instincts. In this future United States, the roads are pivotal. The entire economy is now reliant upon them, much the same way our entire economy is reliant on energy now. It's no surprise, and not to get political about why the oil prices rise or fall, because I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but it's fairly intuitive. When oil prices rise, everything gets more expensive because everything has to move from one place to another before it's bought and consumed. Now we've eschewed, for the most part, combustion engine travel across the United States in this short story, The Road Must Roll, at the cost of this massive civil works project, these conveyor belt roads. So it's very understandable how the people who keep those roads rolling and who do the hard, dirty work, the technicians, not the degreed engineers in their offices, but the guys who actually turn wrenches and make shit work, if you'll pardon my French, feel that, hey, we are the most important people in the country. So in opposition to Van Cleek is our protagonist, Gaines, who's the chief engineer. And here Heinlein does something pretty clever for the time, not an uncommon trope, but I think it works pretty well. He has a Watson character, that is to say, a character to whom he can explain things without making it utterly clear that he's looking at you, the reader, and explaining his universe to you. Gaines, the chief engineer of the United States Conveyor Belt Road Network, is showing around the Australian Minister of Transportation, a guy named Blenkinsop, because Australia is considering investing in their own conveyor belt roads, since they also have a lot of territory to cover and a lot of people moving around inside their country. So you end up with an action-adventure story at a certain point, because Van Cleek tries to take over the roads, and Gaines, with his loyal core of engineers and those technicians who are not corrupted by Van Cleek, manage to outwit him and take control of the roads back and prove the merits of the conveyor belt road system and the merits of their approach to how they handle labor and management on the roads. Probably one of the most interesting things, and the reason I opened up with the Rotormen, which, for those of you who may not know, the Rotormen is Heinlein's repurposing of my beloved caissons, the United States Army Field Artillery song, for the purposes of his short story. So this is not the first time you'll see Robert Heinlein kind of fall back on, or sorry, it is maybe the first time. This is not the last time you'll see Robert Heinlein kind of fall back on his service academy experiences. Because his answer to what if you have this giant technical achievement upon which the entire economy of the United States is dependent, who should be entrusted with it? Well, let's make a service academy, and that service academy will produce professional engineers who are also trained to be leaders and given a fanatical zeal for keeping America's roads rolling. The United States Transportation Academy, which explicitly in the book is likened to West Point, Annapolis, or the Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs. So overall, I enjoy the story quite a bit. It's not as profound as some of his later works, but it is, I feel, a solid Heinlein at work, embracing themes that he's going to do an even richer job with in later short stories and novels. I will say, if you get hives hearing some older, how do I put this? So there are some attitudes towards women that even my somewhat less than fully progressive self consider maybe a little outmoded at this point. He does have a very the protagonist has a somewhat dismissive attitude towards his wife and his wife's concerns. If that upsets you, then maybe this story would upset you. I will say that this, if I were to wildly speculate, this story is written before Robert A. Heinlein married Virginia Heinlein, who is a huge part of the Heinlein story, if you're not familiar with it. And this is before the advent of the Heinlein heroine, the improbably heroic and talented redhead of Heinlein fame. Not always a redhead, but very often a redhead that populates his later stories. You do get to see that character archetype in later stories in The Path Through Tomorrow, but we don't get to see them yet. This is still very, very old school in a way that isn't necessarily flattering. I hate to give trigger warnings, but if that sort of thing is going to turn you off, yep, it's present in this short story. Heinlein is not a misogynist, was never a misogynist, but he definitely is, he wouldn't, I don't think you could hold him accountable for having what was a very common attitude in the 40s, and nor was it the most egregious display of it. In any event, I really enjoy the story. It's not the top tier of these short stories for me, but it's definitely worth reading. I recommend you read The Path Through Tomorrow in its entirety, but this short story is a really good, fun step on the way. Yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about The Roads Must Roll. We'll return next week with, hopefully next week. I know, there have been some delays. Bear with me, guys. But we'll return with Blow Ups Happen. In the meantime, please feel free to join our Facebook group. It'll be in the liner notes below. Like, subscribe, leave us a review if you're enjoying the content. It really does help. Appreciate all of you who have subscribed, who have listened or watched and enjoyed this content. I appreciate you. Please let me know what Heinlein works you're looking the most forward to. Forgive me for misspeaking. That is all the time we have for Lore and Valor today. Hope to see you next time. And until then, oh wait, I didn't plug anything. Okay, sorry. I forgot to plug. The Romanov Rescue, my collaborative novel with Tom Kratman, Kacey, Ezell, is out in paperback now. There are signed copies at the Champion Forest Barnes & Noble, if any of you are in the Houston area. And also, I have been reading an anthology which has quite a few of my friends and acquaintances, edited by Larry Correia and Kacey Ezell, called No Game for Knights. That's out in hardback right now. Having a lot of fun with it right now. I'm actually on the first short story by Robert Buechner, which is an alt history World War II story that's super interesting, or post-World War II story, but posits an alternate path through World War II that leads you to a very interesting place. So I'll put a link to that in the description below as well. And that is actually all the time we have for the Lore and Valor podcast today. I hope to see you next time. And until then, keep up the